Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to 22 Panels and the Milestone Book Club. I am joined by the brothers Anderson, no relation, and we're going to talk some mo- ah, Mothership Connection. Not the Parliament Funkadelic album, but
Right.
the though I mean that would make a
But
decent
definitely
soundtrack for
alluding,
this.
yeah, definitely
Right. Yeah,
alluding
definitely
to it.
definitely would make a decent soundtrack for this segment.
Yeah.
But the one hardware book and the string of Icon.
It's like 5 issues of
Books.
Icon or six.
Five or
At least
six, I
at
forget.
least five. Yeah, it might be
Yeah.
six.
And this is also for me personally, this is a milestone. This is milestone. That was unintentional, I promise. This
It's
this
a
is an important.
milestone of
It is
milestone.
a milestone because for me personally, I've talked about this on previous episodes, but my first exposure to Milestone was through a set of promotional issues from the second year or so of their books. And this is the first, or well, I guess it would have been the third year at this point, because this set
Right.
of issues has the first one of the ones that I have. This set is because I got like one random issue from each of their major series at the time, and one of them was Icon number. I'm going to look this up right now because I'm curious. I think it's like 21. Let me double check. It's the second to last part of uh Mothership Connection, so it's issue 20, I think is the
Okay.
first is like the one random issue of Icon that I had. Then like I pieced together everything I knew from that and the trading card set that was in my that was also part of the promotional
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And
I still need to order the trading card set.
I'm so tempted, but like I just can't justify it right now. But also I'm so tempted. And
It's
issue
not that
20,
expensive, which is why I keep kicking myself for not ordering it.
uh, issue 20 is a weird one, or not weird, but it's the one that has a structural difference because there's not long segments, but there's segments of text illustrated as opposed to like a full comic book sequence. It feels like a um it's not that it feels rushed, but it does feel like it's very clearly trying to, wrap up a whole lot of separate threads in a very concise way. And it does. And I think it actually does a pretty good job of it. Um but it's stylistically, it's structurally different from most of the other issues. And I
It's
mean, they
also
knew
the
what they were doing.
100th milestone issue.
Is it? That
It
also makes a lot
says
of
so
sense.
right on the cover,
Hey, I missed that
celebrating
part, didn't
our
I?
100th milestone issue. Guest
Hmm.
starring Hardware, Static, Dharma, and Wise Son.
And of course, that also explains why we've got three of the major artists on it.
Right.
We've got Chris Cross,
Andy
JP
Bright,
Leone,
Crisscross, and John P. Paul
yeah,
Leon. And many more, it says.
and many more. Yeah,
Yeah.
but this, I mean, this was an interesting. I mean, well, this is an interesting arc overall because this is them wrapping up a whole bunch of the stuff from all the previous issues. Like it says, it's issue 100 of Milestone as an entire, you know, system.
Universe.
Yeah, as a
Mhm.
universe, and it's really I like it. And part of it is nostalgia because again, I read this comic with like zero context for what had happened before in Icon. And it's one of those things where if I had this with X-Men too, where I had a random X-Men issue from the 90s that made X-Men seem like this really, enormous, elaborate thread of, web of various threads and subplots and all this cool stuff was happening that they kept hinting at. And then I actually read a bunch of the issues sort of around it. And I'm like, oh, they were pulling just so much out of thin air. And pulling and just like readily cramming things together, and every writer would come on and clear half the board of the previous guy. But it felt much bigger, and in that sense, this is a similar thing where it's like I got this one issue that drilled down so many of the storylines like into a coherent form and wrapped up so much, and it felt really cool and conclusive because I didn't have the context for it. But I mean, going back and reading it now, I still feel like this is a really well done issue,
It is.
despite or perhaps because it's meant to be a thing where everyone gets a chance to shine, both the characters and a lot of the creators too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean this set of issues, including the hardware one, is the beginning of a seismic shift for what Icon is. I don't know for the whole Milestone universe. I'm kind of curious about how much this will affect the other Milestone books because I don't remember. I did read them, but I don't remember how much it changes, Static and Blood Syndicate and everything. But obviously, it's going to have the seismic shapes shifts for Icon. So,
Yeah. And similarly for me, I had some of these issues. It's interesting. I'm looking at the dates right now because I think at this point, yeah, okay. So I definitely was in college and like, I think like a lot of us, my comic readership dropped way off in college. So I kind of had sporadic issues. I had like I think I actually had the long goodbye issue in maybe one of these, but not a lot of the
hmm.
other ones. So similarly, I had them somewhat out of context, but the way it's written, you really can pick up on, what's going on. And obviously I had read a lot of the early Icon issues. But yeah, no, I similarly like really liked this run. I also like the hardware tie-in, just with
Hmm.
with hardware having been the one who cracked the code on his the device that Icon uses to contact
Yeah.
his people. It
I
also reminds me, oh sorry, real quick. It reminds me of one, obviously like, there's was very intentional, Superman archetype stuff with Icon, which we've discussed at length. But
hmm.
one interesting distinction, which this reminded me of, is unlike Superman, Icon's, people aren't gone or like, you know what I mean? And it seems like as though his world uh, wasn't destroyed. So as a result, he essentially has a home to go back to, which is a central part of the emotional conflict of this run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, yeah. So and his, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, you were about to say something.
No, this reminded me of something else where I forget if I had said this, but another friend of mine who had read a stretch of Icon issues as part of a review thing, he noted that like what makes Dwayne McDuffie said that he wanted to make Icon a black conservative character and sort of get into his head and make that work. And what makes it plausible for this character is the fact that he's coming from a world that has solved all its problems. He's coming from a utopian space, super great place where everything has been solved and all problems are gone. And so he's striving to return to that status quo, which for him really is better. Like for him, the good old days really were good old days, and like it's a radically different perspective. And so he's constantly been searching for a way to get back home. And even when he's become a superhero, it's only sort of out of being not bullied, but like it's been out of Rocket convincing him that no, actually, I mean, you can do good here and help us get to the point that you already know.
Mm.
Um, which is a good point, and this is really diving into then that exploration of rather than just sort of leave it as like the eternal status quo with your, the same thing with your Ben Grimm who can never stop being the thing or whatever. No, they actually confront the fact that like, yeah, if his people really are this great, and if he really has been stranded on Earth, but he has all this cool technology, and he has a super cool inventor friend, yeah, he'll get this stuff fixed and he'll make contact with him again. And like the fact that they follow up on that and make this such a major shift is really cool. I love it. I love that they have leaned into this idea and made it a crucial part of the milestone uh not metaverse, but like the whole universe,
Yeah. Universe. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And it's like it's so interesting because like yeah, I think we've all been discussing the fact that this arc it really grapples with the idea of his home world, like returning to it. One of the just kind of ever-present themes of this arc is Icon essentially getting his affairs in order, like because
Yes.
he doesn't seem to have much question as to if he's going to go back to his with his people.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, with that, there's a lot of exploration of where he fits in, as a black man in Dakota and on Earth, etc. And it's because the first, yeah, I think it's the first issue in this run. and actually MD Bright, the longtime artist, wrote that issue
Mm,
with Dwayne McDuffie, with an
yeah.
assist from Dwayne McDuffie. But like, yeah, that issue kind of like dives into, ironically, what is like I think a lot of fans' critique of Icon when they discuss like who's the best Milestone character from the original run, which is just kind of like this idea of like him, like, yeah, maybe being a conservative or being harder on black criminals. And it's a fascinating I don't know, it raises some interesting questions because, you know, the initial incident, right, that sets it off at the beginning is there's two criminals. There's a multicultural pair of robbers. You know, one is white and one is black. And the white guy, like, I think he surrenders immediately because he's like, oh snap, that's Icon. And the black dude is basically like, man, and you're being shook. I'll deal with him. So he pulls his gun and he fires it wildly, and Icon deals with it, presumably at super speed, and he takes care of the situation, takes that dude down. The other guy had surrendered, and this guy obviously responded with violence and endangered the crowd. But the problem is, a lot of people didn't even, it happened so fast, a lot of people didn't realize what had happened. And the
Yeah.
perception, which when it pops up on the news, is that, you know, Icon came up on these two criminals, and one was black and one was white. And he kind of went soft on the white guy and he took out the black dude. And it's not that they present that as the only you know, event that caused this contention among the people. It was also the fact that, like, you know, people were just looking like, oh, you're saving people on bridges and being all gentle, you know, downtown, but like uptown, you're, you know, causing all this violence. And then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you also get another look at another. He kind of, you know, Icon kind of can't catch a break. I don't always agree with him. There are definitely times I don't agree with him. But there's
Yeah.
another incident here where he goes to I don't know if it's I think it's like a factory or someplace where they're producing drugs. And the basically when he busts in, him and Rocket, like the guys in there, they start firing wildly despite the fact that they got combustible chemicals there. So they blow themselves up, you know. And again, as he goes outside, the perception is like, oh wow, Icon like literally blew up this community in order to get a few criminals, you know. And
Yeah.
so, and paired with that, there's a dude who is, I mean, he kind of like, if he's not a politician, he's definitely got like political ambitions. But there's a dude who's like, you know, positioning himself as like an activist and the voice of the
Yeah.
people. But he's one of those people that like never saw a camera that he couldn't jump in front of, you
Yes.
know.
The
And
Kelson Stuyvesant. I couldn't remember if he had shown up before as a character, but I guess not. Or if
yeah,
he did, I
I
didn't remember him.
didn't remember him from being there before.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting. I just want to say real quick, it's interesting. I know I've been talking a lot, but like real
No.
quick, the so with the question of blackness, and Icon, it's interesting because there have been times, and he does his fair bit of defensiveness here in his conversations with Raquel, but I would argue that he's more open to critique here, or at least he doesn't go on the offensive or defensive as much as he has in the past. Um, he also, and you know, that could partially be because he's distracted by all of the other things he has going on.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there's one point where Raquel is talking about how, you know, she's initially like looking out for him and on his side, but she starts thinking about it. She's like, well, you know, you kind of really don't necessarily relate to us. And like, you know, I think you're a good dude, but essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, um, you know, you kind of really, I don't know, how much do you relate? You're not really one of us. To which he responds, which is fascinating to me. He says, you know, I've been living as a black man longer than anyone on earth right now because he's,
Yeah.
you know, he's hundreds of years old, which is really interesting. And I mean, that kind of ties into like real life questions of race and identity, you
Right.
know.
Is
Yeah,
he's sort of like a transracial adoptee metaphor. I mean, he's a lot of different metaphors, but like part of it is, yeah, he is somebody who is a transracial adoptee in multiple directions because he wasn't really born black, but he kind of was. But then he also was born to a totally different generation, and he has so many other life experiences. But he comes from another place, and it like his identity is such an interesting layering, and it makes for such a really fascinating discussion for this character of like to what degree does he find himself, accepted by and home in various communities of Earth or off Earth. So it's no, I mean everything you're saying and more like this. Yeah, man, yeah, Dwayne McDuffie, like. Shocking to say that Dwayne McDuffie wrote good. Like, it's not
Mhm.
news to
Yeah,
anybody. But Icon as a character, for people who talk about him as like, oh, he's just the Black Superman. Like, no, there's so much more to what exactly he represents and how he works, and it's yeah, no, I love it. And
yeah,
this set of issues brings that to the fore in a really good
right.
way.
Yeah, and I most likely I may be I'll be brief because I may be repeating something I said when we first discussed Icon like what well over a year ago. But it's not just that like Icon is good just because he's black, but I think it's his evidence of the need for not just black characters, but just the full gamut of humanity in storytelling because it just naturally, first of all, when you have one race that is the quote unquote default in storytelling, you're gonna get kind of generic after a while in many cases. And, like Icon's identity, the questions of his identity, his multiple identities, they just kind of, when you get a great writer like Dwayne McDuffie, they just provide an opportunity to take this character to places that like, Superman can't go. And I love Superman. Superman is dope. But
Oh
like,
yeah,
but another thing too, which I found really interesting is I have forgotten that some of the cool things that they brought in the current Milestone Returns run of Icon, where they kind of dealt with his past and like what he was doing, in all those
mm,
intervening years between enslavement and now that he's a wealthy man, like they did touch on that, albeit like I think, they spent more time on it in some of the Milestone Returns issues, but
yeah,
you see that like he it wasn't like he just you know, enslavement ended and he just was sitting around getting rich. Like, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like he was on the Underground Railroad freeing his people, which I'm sorry for me, that's a black man. Like you know what I mean? He's putting in the work where it counts. And it's also cool because, it's the big question when you have I don't know, the some of the other superheroes who were around during like really terrible world events. And it's like, well,
right,
what were you doing? Like, you know what I
right,
mean? And so you see that Icon was fighting the good fight.
yeah.
Um
Captain America gets the pass because he was frozen from
he was frozen. Yeah,
yeah, so he like couldn't have been in Vietnam or wherever. But yeah,
oh, let's see. Wait, he was unfrozen by the
Uh,
60s. So
with
he
the
could have
with
he
the
could have
sliding
he could
with
have
the sliding
really
time scale, he
yeah,
wasn't.
no,
I just mean
no,
like
but those issues were new in the early 60s. So he really
that's
sat out a lot of racial injustice in the
oh that
South.
yes oh no that too no I know I'm
That's
just
all right. No,
no
no, no.
it's
I'm joking. Like these, it's all good.
no I get you no yeah I mean I do I really having read this again like I need to reread the Milestone Returns Icon and Rocket and kind of brush up on that because I also wonder the big change to his background in Icon and Rocket was that he was sort of a cop, essentially, in that he was chasing a killer, an intergalactic
Right.
killer type dude. And uh, I don't remember to what degree that becomes an element in his backstory in Icon and Rockets. I'm trying to think now whether or not that becomes like something they comment on. And I kind of don't think
You,
so.
in Icon of Rocket, it's interesting because, well, first of all, those issues move along I mean, not that these issues drag by any means, but those issues really kind of move along at a quick clip.
Yeah.
And I do remember, I think one of the biggest maybe updates that they made was they might have grappled some with the whole conservatism thing, but it seemed pretty apparent in that like no, he wasn't just some dude who is just judging other black people. And I say he was a little
Yeah.
more down, like out of the gate, you know. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this original run is I don't know, this made me, despite all the things you can say about like, you know, conservatism, black conservatism, etc., like I don't know, this run really made me have a lot of compassion for him as
Oh
a
yeah.
character because you see him like it first of all, I mean, you know, I mean not to tell black folks business when I'm the only black folk on the show, but like, but I will say that like, you know, a lot of times the real life analog of Icon, you know, not even an icon of Augustus, right? Like the real hardcore black conservative, they aren't trying to hear anybody's critique, and if anything, any valid critique you have of them only drives them further into the belly of the beast. And then aside from that, like being conservative today versus 1995 is just something even more extreme.
Yeah.
Granted, the extreme stuff that was happening in Gingrich was around then too. Like so, conservatism was getting even uglier at this
It
time, but
was
it's
it
only
was definitely
it was
beginning
beginning.
to
Yeah.
make its I mean, it started with Nixon and Roger Ailes
Oh hell
swearing
yeah!
that he never wanted to let it happen again, but
Right,
Gingrich was definitely a sharp turning point
right. And let's be
in
real.
the
I mean, Reagan is the
Oh yeah.
he's
No, no,
the
no. I
goat
wasn't
of it. No, no, no. I'm
yeah.
not critiquing what you're saying. I'm just also saying you're right. It goes back further because you got
Mhm.
But even large quantities of Republicans will list the Gingrich era as where the truth stopped mattering.
yeah. No, that's fair.
It
Yeah,
became anything to win.
yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it was an interesting time to be a conservative when these were coming out, and probably the last era where there were a significant number of black conservatives.
You know,
Um,
I'm kind of
Go
going
ahead.
back over this in my head, and I'm trying to think. So, Icon having sort of a conservative point of view in the comic is very well established. But I'm trying to think if there was ever him sort of having any like explicit real world political dimensions. Like, I mean, it's not that he's going to be, endorsing someone for president or whatever, but I'm trying to think like if there was a sequence or a panel or anything where it was about like a real world topic or like a well, okay. The
I
one
think it
example I
was
can think of that
yeah.
is abortion, in which case he was actually pretty pretty firmly on a more left-wing position. You
Right. And
know,
that's what I was going to say is that it's interesting because again, I love you guys, but it's, you know, if we had like one more black person to bounce some of this stuff off of. But no, but in all seriousness,
we keep trying.
no, no, you know what
I
it
just
is, you know what
haven't
it is,
I just haven't
you know what it
succeeded.
is, you know what it is. It's kind of like this is my own stuff and not wanting to be like in a position of like I'm explaining black people to white people, but that's neither here nor there. Everybody's cool here. We're all cool. So no, what I'm trying to say essentially, right, is that oh yeah, you were talking about like his positions. So it's complex, right? Like I think that the character is, you know, definitely read as like at least at minimum socially conservative in a way that like I actually knew people I've known people throughout my lifetime who maybe would vote you know, Democrat. Also I'm sure we've all voted, but just for anybody listening, well, you know, by the time they hear this, God willing, we'll have a President Harris, but you know, whatever. But
That would
like
be
anyway,
very, very nice,
yes, yeah,
please.
yeah. I'm staying
Pretty
positive.
please.
I'm staying positive, man. But what I'm trying to say though is like he is the type of person where he's not necessarily going to be like Reagan, 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 but he also has this like I pulled myself up, you know, blah blah
yes.
blah, which I think definitely ties into what you were saying, Ted, about how he had come from a utopian world and everything, and he didn't, you know, necessarily he was able to come in with the outsider's perspective. Um, so it's you know, there, but like Raquel is his window, and you know, to your earlier point about him not kind of staying frozen throughout the series' progression, like he does, you can tell that he has grown in his time with her, and he's
Yeah.
said as much. Like he has acknowledged that he's grown through knowing her and listening to her. And like that's a great point too about like despite him having this conservative leaning, he was, yeah, very open-minded about the question of like bodily autonomy for women, you
Yeah.
know. So yeah, so it's interesting. He's not, that's the thing, is like Icon's not a
I
bad
mean,
guy.
there
And
there
I think
Yeah.
were
Dwayne,
pro-choice Republicans existed until
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
but by this time, you're
well
right.
well
Yeah.
really until about Bush. I mean, this was where it stopped being acceptable to be. I mean, that to me is one of the reasons that the icon is fascinating, even beyond just the Milestone universe being fascinating, is icon really does represent like uh Michael Steele or God, I'm drawing blanks. Um, Fiscally conservative, willing to buy into the idea that the Republican Party wasn't inherently racist, that was still way more possible in 1994 than it was even in 2000. But Gingrich really ushered in the era where it became much harder very fast,
Well,
you know.
yeah. So, all right. So I got, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. Like, A,
Well, and I want to
this
hear
is
them.
just me. This is just me.
Right.
I don't trust Michael Steele. I don't have anything against the man. You know what I mean? But I will
Well,
say, I will
I
say
didn't say you should trust him,
he
but
kind of started
he's not
becoming.
Tim Scott either.
Yeah, no, I'm not attacking you. Yeah, well, don't get me started on Tim Scott. But that's the thing, right? Like Tim Scott is the natural progression of somebody sticking with the Republicans at this point. And like even in 92, 95, you had to be doing some like mental gymnastics to or contortions to kind of like fit yourself in. Blackness is not a monolith. That being said, you're oftentimes breaking bread with people who, by this point, definitely by the 90s, had,
Yeah.
this is well into after Lee Atwater and his whole, strategies he was putting into place to exclusively play off of white racial resentment, as a vehicle for the whole Republican Party. But like, so I guess what I'm saying is like, we were talking about Mike Steele, but forget that. Forget him. Icon is better. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? And
Icon's way
I
better.
think in the hands of Dwayne McDuffie, like that's what I love about the writing in this book is that like I think Dwayne McDuffie is he knows black people. He's a great writer, and he's really good about like writing about social issues in a compelling way. And so it's interesting. He kind of didn't give us a cardboard cutout version of any of these guys. You know what
No,
I mean?
yeah.
Like
No, I mean what I
it's
felt like
actually, yeah.
is that he created a character who was a Lincoln Republican, quite literally, who built himself up to a place where he was able to somewhat separate from the world and therefore stop thinking on that level until Rocket shows up and makes him.
Yes, and that's, I mean, that is the genius of a lot of the Milestone characters. Similar to I mean, Hardware has not the same journey, but also is a character who undergoes a journey very specifically over the course of those issues, from being just murderous and sort of interested only in revenge to being a totally different character and willing to
Well, and
work
even
with.
before that, believing that if he worked hard and was
Well, yeah,
smart enough and whatnot, that like it wasn't going to matter that he
wasn't
wasn't the
white.
bloodkin or
Yeah,
wasn't the, until he slammed his head against the ceiling and
or the cage, or the window. No, it was
right,
the window
right,
metaphor.
the window,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, that's And the thing about like the reason we like Icon, despite him being sort of a conservative, jerk sometimes, and like having these, there's those moments where he's like, oh, just because I don't have to mangle my sentences like some sort of cretin in order to be black, that sort of thing. And it comes off as very, high-handed, and it comes off as a lot of things. But like we see him in so many facets, and we get his whole life story, and we understand exactly where he's coming from, and that humanizes him oddly, despite being an alien. Like it makes us realize exactly where he's coming from, and we see it and we understand it, and that's like the genius of making this character work.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
kind of
and
just saying the same thing you did. I just, to emphasize.
yeah, and even in that exchange, where it was interesting because, Raquel had critiqued him on a few things in questioning whether not only if he quote unquote was black or identified with black people, but also she just questioned maybe his empathy and for black people specifically, not saying he didn't like them, but like whether because there is a question of equity, right? Like one of the biggest flaws with post civil rights movement in America is this fallacy. There's like Rosa said,
Marcus is
Martin,
is is
Martin,
is
yeah,
dry
you don't
dry
even need to see that.
washing his hands to
Sure,
to
yeah,
to
but
imply that we're
it's
done.
cool.
I'm
No,
just reminding
We
you that
fixed
we're
racism.
audio only.
I
Yeah.
know, I know. But that description actually slowed down this conversation. No,
Sorry.
but no, it's all good. It's all good. No, but essentially what I was going to say is that like there was this lie, right? That it's all done, the work is done, and everybody's equal. And obviously I think for the three of us on this call, we probably all understand the difference between equality and equity. Equity being actually like going a step beyond being like the laws are the same for everybody. You can do what you want, and actually looking at like, no, what is the situation? Who in our society has a 400-year head start built on free labor? You know what I mean? Even if your ancestor didn't own uh, people, you did benefit. Like that's one of the other things that drives me crazy too, is when people are like, my ancestors didn't own slaves. It's like, okay, but there was an infrastructure that was built that you benefited from, and even a poor side note, real quick, I don't know if anybody's watching Penguin, but it's a fascinating
I
show.
need to.
Penguin has nothing to do. Well, no, Penguin does have to do with race to a certain extent. But the example I was going to give is in the show Penguin. Two of the main characters. There's Sophia Falcone, and obviously Oswald, and Oz like starts out as her driver back in the day, working for the Falcone family, and this is like before they had a falling out. I won't spoil anything, but they're having a conversation and she's talking about like, oh, you're in a good spot, you got ambition, and you're going somewhere. And like he says something like positive in return to her, and she's like, yeah, but you're a dude, so there's actually upward mobility for you in this family, in this crime family specifically. Now, even though she's like born rich and everything, what she's speaking about is the fact that she's got ambitions in the family business, but that's closed to her because she's a woman. So I bring that up partially because I want to talk about Penguin, but also because it's similar, right? In the sense that you have wait, oh shoot, I lost my metaphor because I was talking about Penguin so much. But
Structural power.
structural probably right. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So no, but it's just that it's the fact that yes, thank you. Sorry, I was talking about the fact that even if you didn't own people, that like if everything is built up and you are a poor white person, you have so many benefits of the doubt and opportunities for advancement that a black person or even a emancipated black person doesn't have. You know what I mean? Not to mention the violence of Reconstruction, the Reconstruction era, but I say all that to say that, like, Icon is really cool,
Yeah,
and I think that there's a lot there. It's interesting too because even in our times, you know, there is so much to critique about conservatives, conservatism, etc. But um, I guess saying icon is conservative is it's like, yeah, I guess it fits as a label, but I think that the person is much more. And I have to say, honestly, in my lived experience, right, when I just think about like, the wide range of Black people I've known, of different ages throughout my life, right? Like, first of all, that conversation that him and Raquel were having about where she was critiquing, you know, how much he can relate to Black people. And one of the things that she said was he doesn't like talk Black, which to
Yeah.
be fair is not the most productive of critiques for anybody, right? Because, I mean, like I'm totally I love our language. I love the creativity of it. You know what I mean? And that being said, I also think it's wrong to essentially quote unquote, credit speaking, properly, et cetera, with being white. Because first of all, that's racist as hell to Black people. But also, it's really weirdly deferential to white people, most of whom don't even speak that properly themselves. But like it's not the best critique. That being said, it's like Icon does defensively
I ain't
react
know what you're
and say
talking
the thing
about.
that he says about like I don't need to, speak like a cretin in order to prove that I'm Black. And that's like a real thing that I have heard
It
said,
is.
had said to me and everything. And not necessarily by bad people, by people that like are largely cool, but I wasn't like really cool with it being said, like, so it kind of like gets to the complexity A of humanity, but also just the complexity of Blackness and the complexity of I probably quoted this on the show, but like Hank Willis Thomas is an artist whose work deals almost exclusively with Black identity and Black male identity. And he had this quote where he said that one of the craziest and hardest things about Black identity in America is that we had nothing to do with creating it, you know?
Mm.
And so it's this thing that it's both like kind of who you are, and it's both like, um, there's aspects to things where, you're navigating so many things at once. You're navigating survival, you're navigating other people's perception of you. I mean, hell, sometimes, sensing people's unwarranted fears of you elicits the very anger that they fear. You know what I mean? Like internally. And it's just kind of navigating like a bunch of impossible stuff. And, people essentially want to put you in a box when they want to talk about like, how proper your speech is or isn't,
Yeah.
So I say all that to say that like that conversation is real. So even though Icon is essentially an alien from outer space, he has been living a Black life for so long. And it actually speaks to the fact that while there are certain through lines in the Black experience in the West, there's also stuff that's changed, right? So like him having the benefit of seeing Blackness throughout all these eras, um, it's given him a different perspective as well, added to his perspective before he even came to Earth, from his world, So I don't know. I think that's fascinating in itself. Even if he just was an Earth-born character with these powers, but he had just been alive for that long, like he still could have essentially been the same dude, just purely by the
Yeah,
crazy
that
question of
that that leads to
immortality
to
and watching
to
people around you
my
die. And
Mm.
my
that's naturally gonna that's going to give you a different perspective on
that
things in
leads
itself. You
perfectly
know
to
what I
the
mean? Let
question that I have
alone,
been
all these. Oh, are you?
that leads
I
perfectly
think
to
you're
the
muted.
question that I have been waiting to can
I
you hear me?
I can hear
Oh,
you,
is it
Ted.
my?
Okay. That
Oh,
that
oh,
leads
oh. Never mind. Sorry, my headphones are unplugged out. Sorry.
No,
I said
that's
that leads perfectly to the question that I have been waiting to ask, which is the particular aspect of empathy that struck me the most from Icon in this stretch has much less to do with race and much more to do with alien versus human, or I suspect differing lifespans. It doesn't seem to even occur to him to talk to Raquel about the idea that he's leaving, to even consider whether leaving immediately while she's still expecting, while this stuff in his mind is like, oh, I've got the opportunity to go, so I'm going to go tie up these loose ends and then I'm going to say goodbye. And he doesn't seem to even like grasp how devastating that's going to be for her,
I
how
mean,
devastating it clearly is for her. And I wonder if that's, I mean, just from looking at covers, it seems like he comes back and he may even be intending to come back. Who knows how long? But I wonder how much that has to do with when you live as long as he lives, going away for a decade isn't necessarily that different from a weekend for us. There's the expectation that like, and he's been on Earth long enough that he's kind of learned some of these things, but we also know that after, did he actually get married or was he just with the woman? That after his relationship with the woman that died, he distanced himself because he became aware of the fact that he was uniquely um, vulnerable to loss because he was going to live longer than the people in his life. So, I mean, to me, that was the theme that I was feeling the most as I was reading this is like Raquel is going through the most challenging period of her life. You are one of the most stable aspects of it. And you're walking away and you're not even really talking to her about it.
I mean, this,
Right.
yeah, this is as with everything else. Like Icon is he is both a story about an alien stranded on Earth and about a black man dealing with the layers of identity that have in some cases been foisted upon him and like the things he's had to deal with in his life. And like there are so many different ways in which to interpret and sort of pick apart this particular stretch of issues and also just the comic in general. And like yeah, I mean, for me, actually, what I started thinking about, particularly when we were talking about Marcus, you were talking about like whether or not we would call him conservative, even, um, and this is another like this is me not having the black experience. This is what I was thinking of it was bits of the Dr. Manhattan stuff from Watchmen where it was, talking about whether he was liberal or conservative. There's like one of the back matters in one of the issues is like a fake interview with him. And there's a
Mhm.
thing where, someone mentions about him being conservative, and he's like, well, I mean, do you prefer black ants or red ants? And he's like, well, I've never thought about it. I was like, well, there you go. And it's not exactly the same thing with Icon's situation for a lot of reasons, but it's similar to that, where
Right.
he's just beyond us in some ways. He doesn't really have to care about us. He was just stranded here for a while, and now he's going home, and he doesn't really have to care. And of course, part of the thing is that he really does care, and that's what this issue is about. Is to some degree is him showing that he does, and even if he's leaving, it's with a heavy heart and so forth. But yeah, and it's also
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of there's so much to discuss here, and there's so many different layers and ways to pick it apart and ways to discuss it through different lenses. I mean, that's pure craftsmanship. Is just showing there are so many ways to interpret his actions and ways to feel both sympathy for him and also anger at him, as Raquel does, and try to get into the heart of his character and realize there is no central truth. Sorry, not to say that he's lying, but just that like there are multiple conflicting elements of his truth that can all be true at once.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's it's tragedy too. Like,
Oh,
there this
yeah.
is a tragedy. And to what you were talking about, Tad, yeah, like it's interesting because, as much as like I've stated some good things about Icon, there is a way where even as much as he's grown, there is a certain distance. And I do think that Dr. Manhattan quote is interesting. I don't know that Icon,
It's not, no,
no, I'm not even calling you out. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm actually processing it
no, I
because
get
I feel like
it.
I feel like Icon would never say that quote, but essentially, from his experience and like his perspective and his lifespan, to a certain extent, I think there is an aspect of that. So you see throughout the course of the issues we read where he does care and he is doing the right thing. Like Raquel could have came to him with that idea in those sketches and he could have been like, no, thank you, go away, kid. But there's a reason why he decided to pick that up. And this is a man who has led his people to freedom in the Underground Railroad, and done many other things throughout over the years. So it's not like it's lost on him finding like, solidarity and empathy with Black people. That being said, there is oftentimes a distance with him,
Yeah.
and that's one of the interesting, really great things that is done in his characterization throughout the whole run of the series is that, you know, he's he is both present, doing things somewhat in the struggle, but also there's a certain level of distance. And it's actually funny because as you were talking about that, Tad, you made me, and I was like kind of like thinking about that distance. It made me think about the first issue in this run, right, where uh, the whole question of if he's a sellout and if he's like being a more brutal crime fighter with the Black citizens of Paris Island, and he's being gentler with white people. Um, it doesn't have to be offenses don't have to be deliberate. You know what I mean? Like there's
No.
implicit bias and there's explicit bias. So it's actually really plausible that without even thinking about it, like, Icon was kind of quote unquote patrolling differently, when
Well,
it
I
comes
mean,
to
I think
work.
of him like there's evidence that sometimes the police officers on forces that profile the most are the black ones because there's so much level of um intrinsic profiling that they feel like they need to make certain that they're I don't know what the right word is.
Over, not overdoing it, but this I was
Yeah,
actually
they don't want to appear that they're underdoing it.
yes, I was actually
Um,
listening to it.
All right, go
Sorry,
ahead. Yeah.
I,
No,
I
no, you
was
go
just
ahead.
I was just thinking some I was listening to a podcast just recently where they were talking about the book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, which was peak white girl boss feminism of the 2010s. Um, and what they were talking about is the statistics that are sort of that undermine a lot of the stuff in that book, talking about like the ways in which they're on a broad level, and I'm probably going to get some of this wrong, but to the best of my memory, what it is that sorry, one of the hosts pointed out that uh, women in a CEO position will, or the statistics have shown that women in CEO positions tend to hire fewer women under them than men in CEO positions, and there's different ways to interpret those numbers, but like one of the theories that has often been used is the idea that women are likely to see to perceive to perceive a quota that they have to be a part of and enforce more than the men who see it
Yeah.
as who don't see themselves as part who aren't part of the quota. And again,
I
I mean, this isn't a one-to-one comparison, but it's a similar idea that yes, there's a similar question to be asked of Icon, and I honestly there is a question that I would have loved to see them push harder on the idea of, yeah, Icon, you've been doing a lot of stopping of like purse snatchers and like carjackers and stuff, and yet you haven't prosecuted the presumably thousands of white collar criminals who have stolen millions of dollars in Wall Street of Dakota, the Wall Street of Dakota. Like that question doesn't really get raised, and of course it's a superhero comic. It's kind of hard to raise it, but like there's a critique to be made there. There is a critique, like you were talking about. There's a way to look at that situation from that perspective and critique Icon the character on that basis.
Yeah, with the I guess the examples you guys both brought up, the parallel to me is very clear in the sense that in the example of women being less likely to hire other women once they're in these positions of power, you were looking at the patriarchy as the overlying like oppressive power structure. In the case of black police officers committing the same evils as white ones, and at times worse. You're talking about like white supremacy as an
Hmm.
oppressive power structure. And these power structures, the messed up thing about them is you don't have to be a dude to be a proponent of the patriarchy, and
Right.
you don't have to be white to be a proponent of um, white supremacy, because like white supremacy and patriarchy and all its other analogs, they don't require you to be a part of the in group, and they quite frankly they poison us all. If
Yeah, I
you're
was
not
about to say,
vigilant,
importantly, you also don't have to be conscious of the fact that you're part of it.
hell, and it's actually
In fact,
it's
it
a
wouldn't work
built-in
if it was all conscious.
it's a built-in part of it, which is actually
Right.
why it's one of my frustrations with the futility of the built-in defense that a lot of white people raise when you call things out, which is like, intent, and their lack of intent, whether perceived or real, is that like, you literally don't have to be trying. Just like I, as a man, like, can commit an offense without trying, like, and that's why I have worked to understand, the things that women, queer people, people outside of my experience deal with, so that I can actually, try to kill the patriarchy and all of the other stuff within me, to whatever extent. And it's an ongoing work, right? Like the same as like white people, like you can, you know, try to do the right thing, you can have the good intentions, but without like kind of understanding what white supremacy is and all of the various pitfalls of it and being vigilant, you know, and we can all be tools of it. So it is actually really important to understand the poison if you're going to, be working towards a cure.
Yeah, it's uh, wow, we've been delving really deep into theory on, I mean, not even theory,
Well,
but
and
lived
I
practice
think
and praxis.
the way
But yeah.
that and this ties it all back to, the level, to the extent that Icon is conservative, probably the biggest part of that is he seems to have an actual belief in law and order and policing. In going out on patrol, in fighting crime, he's drawn most specifically to the things that are law and order policing, at least until it's brought to his attention, until he's challenged on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we remember, like it was brought to his attention immediately, right? Because literally at the end of issue one, I believe, if not maybe issue two, but I think it was at the end of issue one where, he's basically like, "Oh man, the police are here. It's all good now," and they immediately turned their guns on him. And there was that famous line of, "I bet," where Rocket said, "I bet this never happens to Superman." And so that's interesting. But it's also like if you think about it,
Yeah, but he's also an
the
alien, so he got it confused.
sure. But if you think about it, like the when it comes to yeah, just I guess just a question of I know what I was gonna say, sorry. When it comes to like this conservatism and everything, it's not that I wouldn't say he's not conservative. I mean, he is, but it's like at the end of the day, that's a label, and I think that
Yeah.
I guess that's what I was saying is that I think that the storytelling is really rich. And in my lived experience, it's like, it's not like, I mean, there's some people who are Tim Scotts and they're really weird and they like, they have no desire, to associate with other black people.
You mean
But,
most black
but,
people don't like
but
to walk out on stage to Dixie?
no, God, come on. We don't do it. Yeah, I know
Okay,
you're gonna do it.
okay.
I know this is a fun little gag for you. You are stabbing me in the chest with this
Sorry. I'm
little
sorry.
witty bar, but
S- I'm
no,
sorry.
I'm sorry, but I have a certain level of anger about this. But no, but
I do
no,
too.
but what I was gonna say though is that like with the exception of like the Tim Scotts, and I only use that word as a well-known stand-in, but like the type of person that is like, not only do I have differing views, but I really don't mess with any of y'all. It's like there's those people, but then there's a lot of people who are 100% like, in the community or associating with other black people, and their views are more conservative, and there's a certain complexity, and it's not like it's either or. It's like either you're shunned or you're not. It's like basically if you want to be around, then you could be around. But it's like you might have like ideological clashes with people. And that's definitely more what Icon is. I don't think Icon is has any desire to be apart from black people. I mean, I think at the beginning of the story when he meets Raquel and he's in his mansion and people seldom see him, it's less about like not wanting to be around black people. And I think it's
It's not
maybe
wanting to be around
it's
people.
yeah, people and bro is depressed. I mean, like let's be
Right.
real. Like he's from a
Yeah.
different planet. And it's actually pretty interesting, like perspective wise, because I thought about this in this getting his affairs thing arc, and also uh even what you were talking about, Tad, with when it comes to his seeming aloofness or thoughtlessness when it comes to Raquel and her feelings, you know, because if you think about it, right, I'm 100% biased and inclined to think about things from a black perspective. But if you think about it largely, that like while Icon, I will always maintain Icon is a black man because he's lived a black lives. But that being said, even if you think about it, like he originally, had a whole other group of people and a whole other life and loves probably and other things. So, I think he both has some affinity for the people of Earth and black people, but also he's got a whole lot of stuff that he's probably feels like he's missed out on a lot. So these are all the things that he's going through his head, as Raquel's in her own world and trying to figure things out and assuming that he's always going to be here, which so it's just like yeah, there's a lot of cool questions that I feel like this arc
Well, and as
raises.
I think about the comparative difference in time, it has a couple of things pop into my head. The first is, you mentioned that he's depressed, and like initially I'm like, his wife died like 80 years ago, and then I went, well, yeah, but 80 years might be. I mean, I don't know what his
And
lifespan is.
yo,
If his
if it's
lifespan's 1,000,
yeah, but if that's the love of your life, that's the love of your
well, no,
life.
I
Like,
get that too.
yeah.
I get that too. But if his lifespan is like 1,000 years, 80 years is like 10 of ours.
Hmm.
It's really reasonable to still be broken up about losing your wife
Yeah.
10 years later,
Right.
right? Um, but then the other thing that occurs to me is even if his lifespan's only a few hundred years, he's known Rocket for like
Two.
a minute.
Yeah.
Oh, but he legitimately cares about. I know
I
what
mean,
you're
he
saying.
does. I mean,
I
you can
agree. Yeah.
legitimately care about somebody in a minute, but, but I think the depth. I think there's a reasonable case for the depth and um, weight of his relationship to Rocket being very different from her relationship to him.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And
I
if you
mean,
think
I
about it,
mean,
she's also a teenager, which is very
right,
much
she's
a me.
16. So the year that they've
Everything
been
is all about me.
together is like a fifth of her, well, not a fifth, what?
I get what you mean. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like 7 or 8% of her life versus, a tenth of a percent of his.
Yeah. Yeah, I the
I
other
mean,
thing
it's
I'm
like
really sorry.
to your middle school kid, a week is like forever.
Oh yeah.
And we're sitting there going, 2 years ago you were this, and yeah, that was a long time ago. And you're like, no, no, it wasn't.
Um what you're saying about Rocket also, I mean, it's her role in this is really crucial, but also I'm trying to remember. She doesn't disappear from this book, not at all. But I think there's also a shift towards not that Icon's been invisible from this story, obviously, but like I feel as though it is more Rocket's story up until
yeah,
now. Like it is,
definitely.
he's 100% there. His contributions can't be ignored. He's huge. He's obviously a huge character. It's very important. But just the fact that like her life is what changes more. Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is Icon stepping forward a little bit more, whereas he's been I I don't want to I don't even want to say that he's been a supporting character. It's just that he's
Yeah.
I feel like Rocket has really had the lion's share of a lot of the really good characterization,
Yeah.
and now
Is this what what you're saying? I don't put words in your mouth, but I think this is what I see. And correct me if this is different from what you're seeing, but I think what it is just what you were saying right up to this point. Like Rocket is kind of a driving force, more so. Like when you talk about
yes,
like fiction and writing and like characters that like make things happen as opposed to characters that things happen to.
yes,
Like you
she's
know
the
what I
one with
mean?
the
Like
agency. Yeah,
yeah,
She she
the
she's
shift
the
is a little bit
protagonist up until
true.
this point.
Yeah.
yes,
This
Well,
arc, I think, is the first one where he's truly a protagonist rather than
he's
a
pushing the
supporting
change.
character.
Yeah,
Right.
right. And in this arc, it's interesting because I think they do have I mean, I didn't count it, but it definitely appears they still have equal page time. And she's got really relevant stuff going on in her journey. But this is what I think it is like this is probably the arc where you kind of see him doing icon stuff solo a lot more.
Yeah.
You see him contemplating, you see him in his interactions because as he's getting his affairs in order, it's a very solitary thing. We're following Rocket and the stuff that she's going dealing with in life, but he's kind of on his own doing this stuff. Whereas
Yes.
previously we would usually see them paired together, like if he's going to the mayor or he's going to Alva or whoever. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So like it's interesting because I think that it's like, yeah, maybe there's a shift in how the camera is pointed and like what we're following him
yes,
and doing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
No,
No,
I
that's a great way to put it.
I wish we had a woman in the group for this next question because I feel like it's almost I almost feel like we're the wrong group to really talk about it, but it's something that caught my attention and therefore I at least want to bring it up. How do we feel about him showing up to Noble and essentially telling him to grow up, be a man, and take care of Raquel?
I can tell you, this is what I think. This is what I think. And I don't want to, obviously, I think it's fine to speak about these issues as men. I think the problem that we have as men is when we like crowd out women's voices
Right, right, right.
or claim the authorities. But these are my feelings on that. I in my own life have definitely had situations where there was really some just men who really weren't shit, right? And they were harmful or predatory, and I would intervene as yeah, I'm sure we probably all have had some version of that, right? And I think the difference in doing that in a way that's messed up versus a way that's positive is if you're coming from a place of respect and you're not treating the women in your life or the women in question as though, they're helpless or, and you're just coming from a like, I'm standing up for my person because it's the right thing to do. And I kind of read it in that way that he was, actually full disclosure, that was like, I think in the last issue in this arc, I didn't quite get to that in the reread, but I do remember it. I remember that
But
that
I mean,
exchange from
specifically, it feels to me like he's telling him to go get involved in her life.
right,
Um,
which is I do think it's misguided in the sense
and
that it's kind of like
that's
that could be a problem if he
well,
just doesn't
particularly
have it
with
to
him
give.
leaving.
Right,
Particularly with him leaving, he's taking this thus far unreliable guy, this
right.
guy who's acting unreliable in the conversation, talking about, I offered to pay
I'm
for an
gonna tell you,
abortion.
but
The
this is the
kid's
thing.
not my fault.
This is what I would say though. This is what I would say. I did say what I said, right, about like standing up for
Right.
the women in our life. That being said, I think this is probably an element, as much as we're going back and forth about the conservative thing, this is maybe a reflection of kind of the magical thinking that sometimes does come with
Yeah.
conservatives, because it is like, even like we've all talked about and probably know the fact that the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing was initially meant to be facetious, and people are, misusing it in modern times when they say like just pull yourself up by your bootstraps because it is physically impossible, right? And that's that type of magical thinking where they're like, well,
Well,
just
I mean,
do things differently. And that's essentially
it's
what he is
it's
saying to him.
not even the most magical thinking that I've heard regarding poor people lately. Apparently, according to a well-known fired famously by Fox personality, the the people with FU money are not the rich. They have the most to lose. It's the poor. The poor are the ones with FU money because they don't have any skin in the game.
You got to get off of Newsmax. You got to stop. I don't.
Oof. Yeah, no.
I respect you, man, but I think that you're getting your information from some dangerous places. No, I don't even know which one of those disgraced guys. I'm assuming you mean O'Reilly, maybe. I don't even
No,
know.
no,
I
more
Doesn't
can't
recent
even
than
matter.
tell the
that.
You
stain
know
from the
what? You know what? It
bottom
doesn't
of my
matter.
shoe part.
Yeah, they're all the same. They're all the
He,
same. Don't even tell me.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's yeah, God, yeah. Sorry, I had something there and I totally forgot what I was going to say about it. Sorry, go.
Well, wait, we were talking about, was it about
pull it up by the bootstraps.
oh,
The
This is a
bootstraps?
bootstraps.
concert.
Yeah,
This
oh
is an
yeah.
example of the
Tad
magical
had asked
thinking of
had
like
asked about
a
what we think
nuclear
about that.
family will
Right.
do it. And again, I'm wondering, like,
The thing that I was going to
isn't there
say,
another level where it's like I'm worried how assuming Noble actually does anything, how's Raquel gonna feel when he shows up and says, "Oh, Icon told me I need to come take care of you," and she's gonna sit there going, "Icon told you to take care of me.
the
I
thing
need
is,
taken
Well,
care of,
the thing that's I think
and
really
you're the
important.
one that's gonna do it."
The thing that I think is really important to notice about what Icon says is not you need to take care of her, but to be a man is to accept the responsibilities you have, regardless of what caused them, and also
like
just to
he's laying out
recognize
a choice, right? As opposed to
Right.
saying like this is what you need to
you
do.
have to do this. It's like saying, look, oh, I mean, the line that's so good is Noble, live up to your name, which is great. That's
Right.
so good. That's such a great line. And I mean, it is more about abstract principles than, hey, she's my friend and your girlfriend and the mother of your child. Help her or else I'll kick your ass or whatever. It's literally like, no,
Well, and I
there's
guess
deeper principles at work.
I do guess as I reread it, he doesn't mention Raquel. He says, "As a father, you have responsibilities. You must see
Right.
to it that your child is
Which is
fed,
in a
clothed, and
way sort of
sheltered, and
pushing Raquel out of the
educated in
way
their
or
love."
whatever. I mean, there's other questions there. I
But
do,
but but at the
yeah,
very least, it's like take step up and help with your child rather than
right.
you need to go. So that's a very fair criticism. I
I
just
actually, yeah, I don't. I'm looking at it now. I don't think it's bad. I do think there is an element of and I think you put it well, Ted, when you said kind of like, what did you say? It's like very much about like abstract principles.
Yes, it's
And
living up to the principles of being a man.
but his parting word though, right? It's not a threat. He says honor demands that you
Right.
protect
No,
innocent men.
I did.
And then
He didn't threaten him.
his parting word is I
I mean,
ask one thing of you. Yeah, live up to your
live up
name.
to your name.
Yeah,
So
Right.
such a great line.
it's like
I mean,
yeah,
it's not
I
a
don't really have
threat,
an issue with it.
at
Yeah.
least to the extent that a Superman type person can scold a teenager
I think
without there being
he's speaking to him straight up, and
Yeah.
he's what he's doing. Again, if I'm being real, like this is a realistic conversation. Like, you know what I
it
mean? That's been had.
absolutely is.
And also,
And if he had a relationship with Noble rather than a relationship with Raquel, I wouldn't have even asked the question. It'd
I,
make perfect sense to me.
yeah. And the other thing I will say again, I'm drawing on my own life experiences and the people I've known over the years is there's a lot of people who maybe at this point were like Noble and they turned out to just continue down a messed up path. And there's a lot of people like this that turned their lives around and did do
Right.
the right thing. So I think if anything, there's a little bit of positivity in Icon not doing the thing that a lot of people do and just say that boy ain't shit and he's never going to be. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's literally a he's essentially laying a possibility before him and a standard, and he's saying it's up to you if you are going to live up to that. You know what I mean? So I mean, at the end of the day, yes, I don't have an issue with that. Like you know, to your previous point, it would be interesting to have some women's perspective on it. But yeah, I think it's
I
pretty
mean,
straight up.
for
I think it's
me,
also
like
pretty realistic. But you do get my point though, like about
I
right.
totally
I
get
think
your point because
societally, a lot of
the
people, it's like they stop at like, yo, that kid
the
did some bad stuff.
conversation itself, I think, is great. There are two circumstances where I would like appreciate it more. The first is if it was a conversation that he had with Noble when he didn't know that he was leaving. When he thought
Fair.
that he was still here, it wasn't like one last thing I got to do before I leave. I got to go see Noble, and um, and if there was some like hope that he'd follow up and continue helping him find the right way, that sort of thing, or if he had like actually had a relationship with, if you flipped it and Raquel was still pregnant, but Noble was the one that was Rocket, and it was like you can be a superhero, but if you don't take care of your
Mm.
responsibilities, that's a problem.
That
But the fact that he doesn't have a relationship with Noble, and the fact that he's going to say this stuff with Noble as he's about to then go to Raquel to say goodbye and leave, just I don't know. It and maybe it's the same week that like this came out. I both got to listen to a former president talk about protecting
oh
women whether they
God.
liked it or not, and got to listen to a lot of the strong women in my life respond to that. This just felt like the I mean, again, I want to read it as noble intentions, and I think the intentions are absolutely noble. Um,
That's fair. I mean,
Can I offer something? I think
Absolutely.
I think that yeah, no, there's a lot of interesting points there. I think that when it comes to Raquel, I don't think that Icon's actions here are stepping on her agency because essentially Noble can decide tomorrow that he wants to step up and be in her life. And she still has a say in what she wants and doesn't want. You know what I mean? And there's nothing, I don't think Icon put a hand on the scale in that sense. I would say if Icon left this conversation and was like, hey, if Noble shows up, then maybe you guys were meant to be, then that would be like heavy handed. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think he's literally having a man-to-man discussion, and he's saying, that, and obviously, I mean, I think we all know. I think you might have been playfully injecting current events, but I do think that this is very different
Well,
than the whole
also, you
like
know, if I
protect
ever had that
the women in your
conversation with one
life.
of my daughter's boyfriends, she'd kick my ass.
Right, but that's a different scenario though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I,
that's a different scenario. And
I I gotta say, sorry, I just wanted to throw in like one thing that's my take on it, which I think kind of splits the difference here, which is to say, I think this is exactly the thing that Icon would say. This is very
right.
much
Yeah, no, I
something that
think it
Icon would do.
completely
He
fits
is,
for Icon. Yeah, no, it's not out of character.
yeah, like I don't. There's a lot of different ways to read his actions here. If it was somebody real, I would have different reactions to it. Body, body, body. There's back and forth of that. This is absolutely in character with Icon. Like that's how
Yeah,
I feel about it.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't want to. Sorry,
No,
No,
I
it's
no,
didn't mean to
no.
step
definitely
on you,
in
but
character for Icon, and of the best intentions from Icon. I just don't know how I feel about it.
fair.
That's
Yeah.
that's all I'm.
I think that no, that's fair. And but you know, I mean, I think we're ultimately coming back to one of the things that we talked about. We started talking about Milestone, which is I don't think that they're as much as
You're
his name
supposed to think.
is as much as his name is Icon. Like you know, I don't think he any of the characters are meant to be like they are 100% a paragon. I don't think the writers are viewing them as 100% paragon
Well, and how
of
about
virtue
uh,
and principle at all times. I think they
this?
try and they, you know what I mean? Or in Icon's case, I don't think hardware is trying.
This just occurred to me, so I haven't fleshed it out at all. But Raquel named him. Do you think
Hmm.
she named him because she thinks he's an icon, or do you
No,
think
she
it's a
said so.
challenge?
No, she said it is a challenge for him to live up to. In a
Right.
sense, it's arguably what he's trying to do with Noble right now.
It's
You see what I'm
absolutely what he's
saying?
trying to do. No,
Like
no, I agree. It's
he was trying
completely
to do
in
that.
character, and you know, it's
No, but I
not one
mean,
of those things
I'm
that I
saying what
think
Raquel was
poorly of
doing
him.
though in setting the expectation at that time
Right.
is in principle similar to what he's doing here. It's like setting a standard for a person to live up to and then
Right.
seeing if they're going to take that challenge. You know what I mean?
Right.
I I gotta say, this has been a great conversation. I am starting to fade fast, and listeners, in case you can't tell, we're all extremely tired. It's the day before
Yeah.
election day.
What?
Sorry, I had to throw it out there just because
It's true. We're
this is I mean,
exhausted.
we didn't even really do much to recap like the plot or anything. We just immediately started discussing the
Eh.
characters. And that's the thing. Like that's I think that is showing that this is absolutely some of the best comics in the run of Icon, which is saying a lot. Like I
Right.
It
think
is.
this is so solid, and it builds completely on, what had already come before.
Well,
And
I
it's
think we get to know Icon in this. We had the skeleton of a character and icon before this. We knew that he was supposed to be kind of the conservative black man, and he showed some conservative tendencies and etc. But this is the run of issues where Icon actually acts the most
yes,
rather than just reacting or following with Rocket,
yes.
you
And
know.
I mean, what comes after is a lot. And it's been a while since I don't even remember all of it. But I mean, what comes after is,
Never even read it. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, I don't know that it gets better than this bit, but also
Right.
this is necessarily a transition to a different type of what this story is going to be, and this transition is so well handled. It's fantastic. So
Right.
yeah, I'm so psyched to keep going on this because it's so good. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Um,
Well,
uh,
for next month, do we want to try to finish off the compendium?
oof, what do we
Because
have
isn't
left?
it? I think it's two hardware stories and four Blood Syndicate. Is that right?
Something like that. Two
I don't have my
hardware,
compendium in my hand.
six blood syndicates.
Oh, it's six Blood
Six.
Syndicate.
But also, like, just those two hardware on their own isn't going to be interesting. All that, I don't know.
That's why I was wondering how we wanted to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
We could do hardware and like bring in something. I don't know. I feel like the hardware
what
issues
yeah.
not going to be all that much. I'm just flipping through it right now, and it doesn't seem super interesting to me. Although I am just flipping through it, so God knows if that's better. Who knows? I'm okay for doing the whole thing because it also seems like, ooh, it also seems like the Blood Syndicate issues are intended to be more, maybe more standalones. I don't know. Well, the book is kind of been so anyway. I think we can. I think we can do it, and I think we can try it.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
shoot for it. If we decide we need to take an extra week or whatever, we can figure that out from there. Um,
Yeah,
Marcus,
we'll
it
figure it
depends
out.
on your drawing schedule as much as anything else.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I
So
think
I
I
guess I
could do it.
shouldn't assume that Ted's not writing something right now.
When am I ever not working? But yeah,
Yeah, we're all busy.
let's
We'll
try it.
figure it out.
We'll try
Yeah.
it.
All right. So for the Brothers Anderson, no relation, this has been the Milestone Book Club on 22 panels, and we will see you after the next page.
Hey guys, this is Tyler from 22 Panels. I'm here to tell you all about our Patreon. If you enjoy this show, please consider donating to our Patreon to keep this show going. We have many different tiers, all different levels to help you decide what's right for you. Okay, so get on out there to patreon.com/22 Panels Podcast.